Don in London, hello, it's January 14th, 2009. My video is all about recovery from addiction to substance or behaviour, and life rolls on, 14 days into January already, just after 9 o'clock in the morning. And how am I this morning? Well, I've had a bit of a sleepless night. Somebody close to me, I don't know, they're not happy, and I don't know how to help. And I think somehow I may have to just exclude myself to a large extent from trying to help. Sometimes we can make things worse just by our presence. So I'm being very careful. Anyway, about addiction and recovery, my video is all about recovery, really. And so I share my experience, strength and hope. And some days, some mornings are not so good. So here we are. And what helps me, though, to get through all of this is learning the tools of the 12-step program of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, a fellowship of men and women, as I'm going to share in the preamble. I'll share it now, and it will slow me down and calm me down into this present moment, so my head stops wandering off and wondering what on earth is going on. Anyway, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And sometimes it's very difficult to do all of those things, but we are here as a fellowship. I am part of a fellowship, and we do our best to be helpful. So, what helps me besides going to meetings? I went to a really good one last night down in Christchurch, which is just down Flood Street from the King's Road in Chelsea, London. And it sounds like a good address, probably is, but you get common garden people like me who are recovering, just ordinary men and women, as it says there, with a desire to not drink a day at a time. And that's the gift. We just share what we've got going on for us on a daily basis, and when I can't get there, or as an addition to that, I use the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, this little blue one, which is like homework really. It shows me how to experience the 12 steps of living, and then putting it into practice is the key to all of this. So we do this one day at a time, and with any luck, as we go along, we get better at it. But we are, this month is all about powerlessness, or step one of the program. We are powerless over alcohol, and life is unmanageable when we drink. And part of this, in the daily reflections, an AA literature book sort of features very heavily each month on each step. So step one, January 14th, it says this: no regrets. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. And that comes from AA's big book, page 83, depending on which edition you have. It goes on to say, once I became sober, I began to see how wasteful my life had been, and I experienced overwhelming guilt and feelings of regret. Not quite so for me, but I'll explain that. The programme's 4th and 5th steps assisted me enormously in healing those troubling regrets. I learned that my self-centeredness and dishonesty stemmed largely from my drinking, and that I drank because I was an alcoholic. That is, it is a disease, and there are things that we do become self-obsessed and self-centered. It's part of the ailment, and understanding that doesn't ask us to excuse our behaviour. It just explains why we have that behaviour. Now I see how even my most distasteful past experiences can turn to gold, because as a sober alcoholic, I can share them to help my fellow alcoholics, particularly newcomers. Sober for several years in AA, I no longer regret the past. I am simply grateful to be conscious of God's love, or, in my case, the good conscience we all have, and of the help I can give to others in the fellowship. And the reason why I say in good conscience, it is not me elevating myself to any particular status or utilising ego or self-confidence. It's just a flat statement of good conscience means that I understand why I did things in the past. And if there is a regret, is maybe I didn't get here to AA sooner, so I could start understanding what is spiritual. But in terms of my behaviour, I need not regret anything from the past, because it actually brought me to where I am today. And the gift is I have a better understanding of what is going on around me, an understanding of what is okay for me, emotionally, spiritually and physically. And I'm not a perfect specimen by any stretch of the imagination. I have to manage type 1 diabetes, or live with it, both one and both in the same, I suspect, and also clinical depression. And I did some clinical depression questionnaires yesterday, and they gave me horrifying results, which I forget I live with it, and you know, it's almost like awful feelings can be the norm. So when a bit of light comes my way, it seems quite spectacular. Anyway, coming on to As Bill Sees It, this book, again a daily reading, and I'm nearly to the end of this book and then I'll start it again. Page 330, To Grow Up. Yeah, I needed to. Anyway, those adolescent urges that so many of us have for complete approval, utter security and perfect romance, urges quite appropriate to age 17, proved to be an impossible way of life at 47 or 57, and I'm in between all of those things. Since AA began, I've taken huge wallops in all these areas because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. Yeah, and I'm taking some wallops right now. And it goes on to say, as we grow spiritually, we find that our old attitudes towards our instinctual drives need to undergo a drastic revision. Our demands for emotional security and wealth, for personal prestige and power, all have to be tempered and redirected. In other words, find out that we're ordinary people and we have a good living if we understand our emotional and spiritual sobriety. We learn that full satisfaction of these demands cannot be the sole end and aim of our lives. We cannot place the cart before the horse, or we shall be pulled backward into disillusionment. But when we are willing to place spiritual growth first, then and only then do we have a real chance to grow in healthy awareness and mature love. And for me at the moment, I'm having to learn all of those things, simply because when we involve ourselves with other people, we do love them, and the great news is we do know and understand more about love. And as we mature in our outlook, and we understand that it is not all as it used to be, age 17, with the world in front of us rather than behind us, we need to be able to understand where we are. And that applies not just to me, but to everybody. So when we're actually trying to understand where another person is and how they are, we take account of their physical, emotional and spiritual, I guess, being in the moment of now, because spiritual is now, emotions are now. And the unfortunate thing is we can bring up all sorts of old events by our own behaviour with others. So we need to take account of what we do and how we behave. So what helps me is not to be clingy, not to be overly demanding, but to understand that another human being has as much right to make life work as I have, and that whatever their path is, and if our two paths cross, then I need to take account of not just my outlook, but the other person's outlook too. So I do that, and sometimes maybe I bend over backwards, and then find that I've been given a good thrashing in the process. That's how it can feel. So, not always good, but the good news is, I will be covering more of the step 1 process and how it works, this leaflet. And it starts off, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And often I have seen people fail who thoroughly follow their own path. And the gift in all of this is, I have done that, and I've followed my path so assiduously that I went out and started drinking again many a time. I don't know how many times I tried to quit, but it's several years now since I've had a drink. Several years sober, trying to find out what spiritual is, trying to find out what my emotions are. And the gift is, I can actually say to myself these days, how am I feeling, why, what may I do? And that's being assertive. And empathy is, how are we feeling, why, and what can we do? And when we're in company, we need to do that. We need to understand our boundaries and understand our feelings. So I'm learning simply one day at a time. I'm just human. And more tomorrow.